The Sony ZV-E10 has been out for 2 years now, and has quickly become one of Sony's most popular APS-C cameras. But is it still worth buying one in 2023? Let's find out. So the Sony ZV-E10 has been my main YouTube camera since I bought one all the way back at its release in September 2021. So you can probably figure out from that I'm pretty happy with it. I'm using it to record this video here that you're watching, as well as all the example videos and photography in this video. Now new, the ZV-E10 costs around $800 with a lens and $700 for just the body, though the used prices are starting to come down a lot now. And the camera itself packs a lot of new features. So let's go through now what the ZV-E10 has and hasn't got. Well, it has a 24.2 megapixel sensor, which captures images at 6000 by 4000 pixels. It can also record video at 4K at up to 30 frames per second, though that does have a crop of 1.23 times. For 4K with no crop, you need to record at 24 frames per second. You can record 60 frames per second at 1080p and 120 frames per second at 1080p for slow-mo, though that does have limitations when it comes to things like stabilization. And I find the video quality is very sharp, especially in 4K. I'm recording this video in 4K, though on YouTube you'll likely be seeing it downscaled to 1080p. And personally, the 1080p video does seem a little soft, so I would recommend, even if you want final results of 1080p, to record in 4K and then downscale the footage. It definitely, for me, seems to retain that sharpness a little better. Now, this camera is limited to 8-bit colours, which means the colours aren't as accurate as a 10-bit camera. Now, there's a lot of science behind this. To be honest, this is not something anyone is likely to notice, especially as this camera isn't a professional grade camera or at a professional grade price. For things like vlogs, short films, B-roll, YouTube, and most projects, it will still look excellent. So I don't think getting hung up on it being an 8-bit versus a 10-bit camera is something really worth worrying about. Another feature that helps the ZV-E10 stand out is the inclusion of picture profiles. Using picture profiles can help retain quality otherwise lost to compression. And the picture profiles on the ZV-E10 include S-Log wide dynamic range shooting, as well as other professional gamma curve options, such as Cine. Now, there is a whole host of picture profiles in this camera, but I personally prefer the Cine 2 gamma profile, and I'm using it to record this video. So the image will come out quite grey straight out of the camera, and then you need to edit it in your editing software afterwards. Now, this is a bit of a process, and there is a bit of trial and error to get your videos looking great. So straight out of the camera without a picture profile is still very good quality, but if you want to explore all the options that this camera has, then I would start with Cine 2. It's great for 8-bit cameras rather than some of the picture profiles which are better suited to 10-bit cameras, which we were talking about before. So Cine 2 for the ZV-E10 I feel like is a good starting point. Now, if you've seen any other reviews of this camera, you will have heard of the rolling shutter issues that this camera has when taking videos, which basically means when moving your camera quickly, it can make your shots look warped and wobbly. Now, clearly this effect isn't intentional or something that you would ever want. And to be honest, you would expect better from a camera of this price. However, it can be fixed reasonably well in editing using Sony's Catalyst Browse software, which is free and is primarily really used for stabilization. However, it also does a pretty good job of combating this rolling shutter issue. Now, I won't go into this in too much detail now, but for a full guide on how this works, check out this video here about how to set it up and how to process it, so that you can pretty much eliminate this rolling shutter issue. Now, onto lenses. The Sony ZV-E10 uses the E-mount lens system, which is a huge selling point for this camera as the range of lenses is massive, with great options for all types of shooting, whether that be wildlife shooting or portraits, and pretty much everything in between. Now, whilst the ZV-E10 usually comes with a 16 to 50mm kit lens, you can improve your shots massively by using a new lens. So for example, in this video, I'm using the Viltrox 23mm f1.4, and it's my favourite in-studio lens, which provides super sharp image quality with fantastic background blur and brilliant low light performance. whereas something like the kit lens, it might not perform quite as well indoors in low light. But for a full review of this lens and a whole other load of lens reviews that are suitable for this camera, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to leave a like. Now onto stabilization. The ZV-E10 has active gyroscopic stabilization built in. Whilst this is software stabilization rather than built into the body of the camera, the results are still very good, especially when dealing with smaller movements. However, this gyroscopic image stabilization can be improved further by using the Catalyst Browse software, which I mentioned before. Using this software allows you to use the gyroscopic data captured by the camera to help stabilize the footage further, but you'll only be able to do this in post-production with a bit of editing. Now, Catalyst Browse software is free, but there is a payoff when using this, as you will need to crop in your image very slightly to help reduce that shakiness. So still, the best practice is to eliminate any source of shakiness in the first place when you first start filming. But if you do end up with shaky footage, it's nice to know it can be fixed pretty well. Now onto the autofocus system. The Sony ZV-E10 has 425 active phase detection points, which means that the autofocus is very fast, making switching between scenes and finding focus very effective. Some other features worth bearing in mind with the ZV-E10 is that it has a microphone jack so that you can use an external microphone, it has a headphone port so that you can monitor your audio, and it has a USB-C port, not just for charging, but also for live streaming. And being able to live stream with this camera is very useful, especially as it's built into the camera without needing either an additional capture card or any third-party software. It just appears on your computer as a webcam. So it's completely plug and play. Now, this image is limited to 720p, which is definitely frustrating, but for how easy it is to set up, I feel like it's a reasonable trade-off. Now, it is worth being clear that the Sony ZV-E10 really is more of a video focused camera. When it first came out, it was even marketed as a vlogging camera. But its photography performance is still good, with all the shoot modes that you would expect from a camera, including aperture priority, shutter priority, and manual mode. However, the lack of EVF, which is an electronic viewfinder, may make this camera more portable, but it also makes the camera worse for photography, especially if you're shooting in direct sunlight, as you'll always be relying on the screen for composing your shots, and, well, the screen might just be completely washed out by the sun. An EVF is always really handy in that situation, so it's a shame that it doesn't have one, and it shows where it doesn't quite perform for photography as well as you would hope. And this could well be a deal breaker for the photography focused amongst you. Also, in a similar way, the lack of on-body controls and dials makes this camera less than perfect. Again, it's more of a space-saving exercise, having fewer buttons and no shoot mode wheel. While all the shoot modes are available in the menus, being able to choose them quickly is a nice to have, and very easy when you have a shoot mode wheel included. Overall, the Sony ZV-E10 is a great camera with a video focus, but still performs well for photography. For $800 new with a lens, you get a lot of camera for your money, with good image quality, accurate autofocus, and 4K video, as well as useful features such as a microphone port, picture profiles, and built-in live streaming. It is still very easy for me to recommend the ZV-E10 even after 2 years. Do you have the Sony ZV-E10 or are thinking of getting one? Let me know in the comments. But that's it from me, so until next time, see ya.